Hey friends, it's Molly. Waving hand, so. If you've been on TikTok or Twitter lately, you've probably seen people talking about two things that somehow connect to my world, and I couldn't resist diving in. First, Taylor Swift fans are convinced she's been using Braille Easter eggs. Yes, Braille, in her new visuals and merch. And second, Sabrina Carpenter's new song A Man-Child has been accused by some listeners of having ableist lyrics. As someone who's blind, who grew up surrounded by pop music and fan culture, and who talks about disability representation all the time, I've got thoughts, big ones. So let's talk about it. Calmly, with empathy, and maybe a little bit of TRK. So let's start with Taylor. Recently, Swifties noticed something strange. Little groups of dots appearing on some of her album covers, vinyl records, and even her concert visuals. At first, everyone was like, oh, that's cool design. But then someone said, wait, that looks like Braille. And suddenly, boom, the internet went into full-on detective mode. People started screenshotting, decoding, Googling of Braille alphabets, and claiming to find secret messages. Some fans said, Taylor's using Braille to communicate with blind fans. Others argued, it's just a texture effect, not real Braille. And then the twist, when actual blind fans and Braille readers checked, most of those dots didn't spell anything real. Some were backwards, some were random, and some were impossible to read. Here's where it gets interesting. For many people, Braille looks like a cool pattern. But for us, people who are blind or visually impaired, Braille is language. It's how we read books, menus, medicine labels, elevator buttons. It's how we connect to the world. It's our literacy. So when it's used just as decoration, without meaning, it can feel like your language is being turned into a fashion trend. Imagine if someone tattooed random Chinese characters because they look cool, but they don't actually mean anything. It's kind of the same idea. Now, I don't think Taylor meant to be disrespectful. I genuinely believe she's someone who cares deeply about her fans, all of them. But when something like Braille gets used publicly, it should be done accurately and intentionally, not just artistically. Because for some of us, that's not just dots, dignity. This brings us to an important conversation. One that comes up all the time in the disability community. What matters more, intent or impact? Taylor might have had good intentions. She might have thought, oh, Braille looks beautiful. It represents inclusion, mystery, and that's great. Intention does matter, but the impact still matters more. If a blind person sees Braille and tries to read it, but it turns out to be nonsense, it can feel invalidating, like our identity is being used as an aesthetic choice. Representation isn't about using symbols of disability. It's about understanding them. And honestly, I think Taylor, being the kind of artist she is, would want to know that. Now let's move to the other pop star in the headlines, Sabrina Carpenter. Her song, Man-Child, is catchy, cheeky, and classic Sabrina. But a few fans pointed out that one of the lyrics might sound ableist, meaning it unintentionally disrespects or stereotypes people with disabilities. The lyric in question compares immaturity or emotional weakness to having a disability. For some listeners, that line hit hard. Not because it was meant to offend, but because it echoes old stereotypes that have existed for decades. You know the ones, where people use a blind, a deaf, or a crazy as casual insults. It's so normalized that sometimes even artists don't realize the impact of those words. So again, I don't think Sabrina wrote it with hate or bad intention. But it's a good reminder of how powerful words can be, especially when millions of people are singing Hem. This is where both stories, Taylor's and Sabrina's, connect. They're both about representation. When you have a platform that big, your art shapes how people see the world and how they see others. So if you use Braille, people assume it's meaningful. If you sing about disability, people repeat those words without thinking. That's why representation has to come from understanding, not assumption. When I talk about blindness on my channel, I try to balance honesty with education. I want people to laugh, learn, and feel included. That's what I hope pop stars start doing too, not to avoid mistakes, but to engage in dialogue when they happen. Because representation isn't about getting everything perfect. It's about being open to growth, to listening, learning, and doing better next time. She's always learning, always evolving. And maybe this is just another learning moment. So what do I think personally? Honestly, I'm not angry at Taylor or Sabrina. I'm actually grateful. Grateful that these moments spark conversation. Grateful that non-disabled people are finally asking, oh wait, what is Braille really? Or what does ableist even mean? Because those questions open doors. They invite awareness, and that's how change begins. Not through outrage, but through curiosity. If this video makes even one person double-check how they talk about blindness, or how they design something, or how they write lyrics, that's a win for everyone. So now I want to hear from you. What do you think representation isn't just about being visible? It's about being seen accurately. When you see yourself reflected in culture, you gain permission to dream bigger. But for decades, disability in entertainment has been filtered through a lens of tragedy. Characters who are blind, deaf, or physically disabled often exist to teach lessons to non-disabled characters. They appear, cry a little, inspire everyone, and then fade away before the credits roll. That's not representation. That's tokenism wrapped in inspiration. And yet, we've all consumed. We've all clapped when a movie hero overcame their disability, instead of celebrating the fact that they were already enough as they were. Think about movies like Daredevil or Scent of a Woman, stories where blindness becomes a metaphor for something else. Justice, insight, morality. It's poetic, sure, but it misses something real. Because being blind isn't a symbol, it's a lived experience full of challenges and beauty, and the occasional dog hair in your morning coffee. It's human. When I watch pop stars and influencers today, I see the world starting to change. We're slowly redefining what it means to belong in the public eye. Artists like Haben Girma, Marley Matlin, and Selma Blair are showing that disability isn't a story of limitation. It's a story of adaptation. That's powerful. But for every step forward, we still see clickbait headlines that say, "You won't believe what this blind girl did," as if simply existing in the world is shocking. Was Taylor Swift's use of Braille a beautiful attempt at inclusion, or just a missed opportunity? And do you think Sabrina Carpenter's lyric was truly ableist, or just careless writing? Let's talk about it in the comments. Keep it kind, keep it open. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves pop culture and cares about real representation. Because at the end of the day, whether you can see or not, pop culture thrives on perfection, or at least the illusion of it. Filters, lighting, and choreography all work together to create an image of effortless beauty, but disability doesn't fit that glossy image, so it often gets edited out. Think about music videos. How often do you see a person with a visible disability dancing, singing, or just existing on screen? Rarely, because the industry fears that imperfection breaks the fantasy. Yet the irony is that authenticity, the very thing pop culture chases with every relatable influencer post, lives at the heart of the disabled experience. We don't get to hide our humanity behind filters. We live it every day. When I first started making YouTube videos, I wanted to fill that gaps. I wanted to bring the blind girl out of the inspirational montage and into the everyday feed, where she could talk about lipstick, dating, and mental health without having to apologize for her cane being visible. My goal wasn't to represent all blind people. No one can do that. But to show one truth, we exist in every space. Beauty, fashion, pop culture, we're already here. People just need to open their eyes. We all want to feel seen. Thanks for watching, and remember, you don't need sight to have vision. When I was little, I loved the spotlight. I'd line up my stuffed animals, stand in front of my mirror, and belt out pop songs until my voice cracked. It didn't matter that I couldn't see the reflections staring back at me. In my mind, I could see everything. I could see colours, shapes, lights, and the way the world shimmered when I believed I could be part of it. That dream never disappeared. But the way I learned to see the spotlight did. I've always said that disability isn't the problem. Society's view of disability is, and nowhere is that more obvious than in pop culture. Music videos, movies, social media trends, they teach people how to look at others. Sometimes they inspire, sometimes they limit. And for those of us living with a disability, that spotlight can feel like both a warm glow and a blinding glare. Growing up, I wanted to see someone like me on TV, not as a side character, not as a symbol of pity or courage, but as a real person. I wanted a pop star with a cane, a superhero who used a guide dog, a fashion icon who couldn't see the runway but still owned it. Those images didn't exist. And that absence wasn't just disappointing, it was defining. Because when the world doesn't show you people like yourself, you start to wonder if you belong in it. Here's the thing. People love to feel inspired. And sometimes that's a good thing. But when inspiration turns into exploitation, it gets dangerous. The internet loves viral moments of disabled people are doing normal things. Blind person pours coffee. Viral. Deaf person dances. Viral. Wheelchair user shops for groceries. Viral. And the captions almost always read, "What's your excuse? That's not uplifting. That's patronizing." It reduces our existence to motivational wallpaper for someone else's self-esteem. It turns our daily lives into morality lessons. And yet, those clips rack up millions of views because pop culture has conditioned people to see disability as other. But here's what most people don't realize. We don't need to be inspirational to be valuable. Sometimes, just want to drink my coffee, walk my dog and binge watch a Taylor Swift documentary in peace. Now, let's talk about Taylor Swift. Because honestly, who isn't talking about Taylor Swift? Recently, some fans speculated she might be including Braille Easter eggs in her visuals, little hidden messages for the blind community. Whether that's true or not, the conversation itself was fascinating. It showed how eager people are to make inclusion part of the art, but it also raised a question. Is inclusion just another aesthetic, or is it a meaningful bridge? If Taylor really did use Braille, that's amazing. But if it's just symbolic, like a texture added for intrigue, it can feel performative, because real accessibility isn't decoration. It's design. I think about how cool it would be if album booklets came with Braille lyrics, or if concerts had live audio description for visually impaired fans. That's real inclusion. Not just hidden dots on an album cover, but real effort to make art accessible. To be fair, there are moments when pop culture gets it beautifully right. Shows like Speechless and special featured disabled actors telling their own stories, with humour, honesty and heart. That's a game changer. Because when disabled people write, direct and perform their own narratives, the tone shifts. The camera doesn't pity them, it respects them. And audiences notice. People don't just want perfection anymore, they want real stories. They want connection. That's why creators with disabilities, whether they're blind beauty influencers, deaf dancers or autistic streamers, are thriving online. They're not waiting for Hollywood to hand them a spotlight. They're building their own. Pop culture is slowly realizing that diversity isn't a trend, it's truth. The more we see it, the more we normalize it. There's a deep psychological layer here too. When disabled people don't see themselves represented, they internalize that absence. It's not just, oh, there's no blind character in this movie. It's maybe people like me don't belong in these spaces. Representation, or the lack of it, teaches us who gets to be the hero, who gets to fall in love, who gets to have fun. That's why I take my platform seriously. Not as a brand, but as a chance to change that script. Because every time someone sees a blind woman confidently wearing makeup, walking on stage or filming with her guide dog, they get to rewire a tiny piece of what they think disability means. And honestly, that's pop culture at its best, not when it sells perfection, but when it sells possibility. We're living in a moment of incredible visibility. For the first time, disabled creators can tell their own stories in real time. No gatekeepers, no stereotypes, no rewrites. Social media has given us the power to shift how the world sees us. But with that visibility comes responsibility. For us, and for those who consume our content. Pop culture can be a mirror or a magnifying glass. It can reflect reality, or it can distort it. And right now, we're standing somewhere in between. The light is shifting, the shadows are fading, and the world is learning that disability doesn't need a spotlight to be valid. It is the light